7 bone-chilling motel horror stories. I went inside alone at 3 a.m. and wish I never did. It was a regular night driving down an empty stretch of highway when Mike's car sputtered, leaving him stranded at the gates of the Whispering Pines Motel. The neon sign buzzed with a flickering light, casting eerie shadows that danced around him like ghosts. A chill crept up his spine, making him shudder as he stepped out into the cold night air. The motel looked abandoned, but he couldn't shake off the feeling that someone, or something, was watching him. The windows were smeared with grime, hardly allowing a glimpse of the inside. A flickering light bulb hung from the eaves, casting a sickly yellow glow on the cracked pavement. A broken swing in the overgrown yard creaked softly, as if pushed by an unseen child. As he hesitantly approached the front desk, he spotted a bent, yellowing sign that read, "Vacancy, 30 a night." That price felt too good to be true. He hesitated, fear gnawing at him. Then came his first strange encounter. The old clerk, eyes clouded like a stormy sky, peered at him from behind the glass. His smile was wide, yet his lips never moved. "Room 4 is all yours," he said, but his voice was a whisper, just below a breath. The air thickened, and Mike could have sworn he saw shadows shift in the corners of the dimly lit lobby. With every step towards the room, the floorboards creaked, almost as if they were screaming, begging him to turn back. An uneasy tension wrapped around Mike's chest, making it hard to breathe as a cold gust of wind swept past him, rattling the motel doors. He finally unlocked room 4, the key feeling heavy in his hand. Inside, he found peeling wallpaper, stained sheets, and an unsettling stillness. The bathroom mirror was cracked, jagged edges reflecting back distorted images. His pulse quickened as the silence deepened, a suffocating blanket draping over him. Before we continue, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Mike turned, feeling a shiver crawl up his spine again. Something was off. A feeling of dread settled in the pit of his stomach as he heard a soft whisper, not from his mind, but from behind the wall. It was unmistakable, a child's giggle. He pressed his ear against the cold wall, heart racing. "Please don't leave," it begged. He pulled away, feeling like the walls themselves were closing in. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the temperature dropped, sending icy fingers dancing across his skin. He turned toward the door, intent on escaping whatever nightmare was building around him. But when he reached for the knob, it started to rattle violently. The sound was like a warning bell. What was behind that door? What secrets did the Whispering Pines Motel keep buried in its shadows? He couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, lurking in the depths of the motel, was something far worse than he could ever imagine. Mike's heart hammered against his ribcage as that rattling knob sent waves of panic coursing through him. He backed away, his breath shallow. The whisper, the child's giggle, it echoed in his mind, twisting his thoughts into a dark spiral. Shadows danced in the corners of the room, taunting him. Everything felt wrong, yet there he stood, paralyzed by fear. Suddenly, there was silence. The rattling ceased, and the air thickened like molasses. Mike squinted, trying to pierce the darkness surrounding him. The motel felt alive, each creak and groan a reminder that he was not alone. He turned slowly, eyes darting around the room, searching for any sign of movement. Just then, the flickering light bulb above him buzzed loudly, startling him. When his eyes shifted back to the door, he was met with an apparition, a shadow at the edge of the hallway. A little girl, no more than 7, with frayed hair hanging over her face. She stood there, motionless, her sad eyes locked onto his. A chill swept over him, her presence felt oddly heavy, as if she carried secrets he wasn't prepared to hear. "Can you see me?" Her voice was soft, yet it resonated through the room like a bell tolling in the dark. Mike swallowed hard, every instinct screaming at him to turn and run. "What do you want?" he managed to croak, his throat dry. The girl tilted her head, a flicker of something sinister dancing behind her eyes. "Help them," she whispered, her voice trailing off into a haunting echo. And just like that, she vanished into thin air, leaving only an unsettling stillness behind. With shaky legs, Mike moved toward the doorway. He needed air, he needed to escape this nightmare. Tentatively, he opened the door, expecting another jolt of terror. Instead, the hallway lay silent and still, illuminated by dim lights that buzzed erratically. The air felt thick with tension, like a string pulled taut, ready to snap at any moment. Clenching his fists, he stepped out of the room. As he walked down the narrow corridor, the old carpet squished underfoot, it felt like stepping onto spongy flesh. The doors on either side loomed menacingly, their edges dark and jagged. And then he heard it again, a whisper, faint and echoing. "Help us!" It drew him toward a door at the end of the hall, one he hadn't noticed before. It was not marked, its wood splintered and weathered. The energy around it felt alive, buzzing with a kind of desperation. He hesitated, glancing behind him, but only the swirling shadows remained. There was no turning back now. Mike swallowed hard, hand trembling as he reached for the doorknob. When it turned smoothly, he was taken by surprise. The door creaked open, revealing complete darkness. He took a cautious step inside, his heart racing. As he did, the whispering grew louder, wrapping around him like cold, clammy hands. It was a chorus of voices pleading, crying. The darkness closed in. "What do you want from me?" he shouted into the void, his voice drowning in the overwhelming sound. Suddenly, a single light flickered to life, revealing a room filled with desolate faces, ghostly figures trapped in eternal lament. Time seemed to freeze as their hollow eyes turned toward him, hopelessness etched into their features. "Help us," they all echoed, a haunting cry that stretched his sanity. Mike stumbled back, his mind racing. Who were they? What did they want? He needed answers, but the chill of despair clawed at his insides. As he fought to regain composure, a familiar face emerged from the shadows. The girl. "Please," she reached out, her tiny hand fragile yet filled with urgency. In that moment, Mike knew he was no longer just a visitor, he was now a part of something far more sinister than he ever anticipated. What had he awakened in the Whispering Pines Motel? And was he ready to confront the truth hidden behind those haunted eyes? Mike's pulse quickened as the girl's haunting gaze bore into him. Her small, fragile frame stood resolute against the wall of despair surrounding him. It was wrong, everything felt wrong. But beneath that wrongness was a flicker of hope, a need to understand what had trapped these souls in torment. "Who are you?" he dared to ask, stepping closer. "What happened here?" The girl's head tilted again, the shadows playing games with her features. They cry for help," she said, her voice still soft but now tinged with urgency. "But no one hears them." Before he could process her words, the room began to tremble. Dust fell from the ceiling as a low, rumbling sound echoed in the darkness, like some restless beast awakening from long slumber. The ghostly figures shifted, their forms flickering under the light like dying embers. Fear prickled his skin, but curiosity pushed him forward. "Why are they trapped?" Mike pressed, fighting the rising tide of panic in his chest. "Because of what happened," she whispered urgently, eyes wide. "Because of the man who took them." At that moment, a sharp scratch resonated on the door behind him, loud and furious. It sent a jolt of pure terror through Mike, and instinctively, he turned to the source of the sound. The door began to rattle violently, as though something or someone was trying to break through. "Stay close," he yelled, grabbing the girl's hand, feeling the icy grip of fear seep deeper into his bones. They backed away, the chorus of voices crescendoing into a maddening symphony of despair. Then, from the shadows emerged a figure, tall and menacing, its face obscured by darkness. A chill swept through the air as the figure's deep laugh echoed, a cacophony of malice. "You should really leave," it growled, each syllable dripped with sickening sweetness. "Help us." The ghostly faces cried again, their voices rising above the laughter. Mike's heart raced. They were all looking at him. The urgency in their eyes pierced through his fear. They needed him to do something. "Why can't you leave?" he shouted, trying to drown out the laughter. "Because of him," the girl sobbed, looking at the figure drawing closer. "He keeps us here." The figure laughed again, a sound that chilled Mike to his core. "You think you can save them?" it taunted, its voice a slithering whisper in the back of his mind. "You think you can save yourself? We can't let him keep us here." The girl cried, pulling vigorously at Mike's arm, her small strength igniting something deep inside him. Mike squared his shoulders, steeling himself against the terror. "No. I won't let you any of you be trapped here any longer." With a fierce rush of adrenaline, he stepped forward, brandishing an old lamp like a weapon. The figure recoiled, its laugh turning into a snarl. "Fool!" it spat, but then something flickered in its eyes. Horror, maybe. With a surge of determination, Mike pressed onward, the fear starting to melt into rage. "What do you want from us?" he demanded. "Just to play," the figure hissed, and then suddenly, it lunged forward, a shadowy stretch of darkness skimming the ground toward him. "Run!" he shouted to the girl, panic slicing through his voice as he pulled her along. They sprinted past the ghostly figures, who swirled in a desperate dance of urgency, forming a path to the door they had come through. With every ounce of willpower, Mike pushed against the terror chasing them, desperate to escape the nightmare swirling around. As they neared the door, the voices reached a fever pitch, mingling with their frantic breaths. "Help us! Help us!" Mike's heart thundered as he grasped the doorknob, every instinct screaming for him to flee. But just as he turned it, an eerie silence blanketed the air. "What if you can't leave?" The figure's voice echoed behind them, its laughter hanging like a noxious fog. Mike's heart sank. Maybe this was only the beginning. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Could he confront the darkness that threatened to consume them all? As the door creaked open, a sliver of blinding light flooded in, illuminating the space before them. "Let us go!" he shouted, and they burst through together. But as they crossed the threshold, the world fell away. Did he just lead them into another trap? The weight of dread sank into his stomach as the door slammed shut behind them. What awaited him on the other side? The sudden wash of light engulfed Mike and the girl, disorienting them. He blinked against the brightness, panic clawing at him. Where had they gone? The flickering faces, the terrifying figure, all gone as if they had been erased from existence. But his heart knew better, they were still lurking in the shadows. "Are we safe?" the girl whispered, her voice shaking as she clung tightly to his arm. Her breath was shorter, and Mike could feel the tremor in her frail body. I don't know," he stammered, scanning their new surroundings. They stood in what looked like a long, dimly lit corridor. The walls were a peeling white, faded with years of neglect. Flickering overhead lights buzzed like angry bees, casting harsh shadows that danced along the floor. He glanced back at the door they had just come through, only to find it sealed tight, no sign of the darkness they had escaped. But the feeling of dread was not gone, it lingered like a bad smell. Something was off, and the stillness unnerved him more than the terror they had just fled. "What happened back there?" he asked, kneeling to look the girl in the eyes. "What do you mean, a man took them?" Her expression darkened, a mixture of sadness and fear washing over her. "He is always watching. He takes those who are lost, and they never return. But I remember I felt hope when you came." "Hope?" Mike echoed, glancing around as the sound of scuffling echoed through the corridor, slicing through the silence. "Yes. You want to help to save us," she replied, her eyes lighting up with longing. "But you must be careful." No. "Who?" "The man." He pressed, his heart racing. She nodded gravely. Yes, him. He feeds on fear. It gives him strength. A sudden crash reverberated down the hall, making them jump. Mike's instinct made him take a step back. The sound came from a door at the far end of the corridor, slightly ajar and trembling as if something powerful were pushing against it from within. "We need to go," he whispered, pulling her away from the ominous door. But she didn't budge. "But we can't leave them," she pleaded, her eyes glistening, reminding him of all those trapped souls he had seen before. He felt the weight of her desperation. "What are you saying?" "We must face him. We have to fight." "Fight?" he repeated, anxiety creeping in. "How can I fight something that terrifies me like this?" "Believe in the light," she shouted suddenly, her voice fierce. "It's the only way to break his hold." Mike's heart raced at her words. He didn't know if he believed in anything right now, but there was a fire in her determination that made him want to try. Dread descended like a fog as the door at the end of the corridor burst open, slamming into the wall with a resonating thud. A figure loomed in the darkness, its face obscured once more, but he could feel the weight of its gaze trained on them. "Trying to escape?" it hissed, a voice like grinding steel scraping against his nerves. "You know you can't run forever, boy." Mike's resolve wavered for a moment, but he felt the girl squeeze his hand, grounding him. "No more hiding," he shouted, surprising even himself. "Then come play." The figure laughed, a jarring sound echoing through the corridor as it emitted a growl that shook the walls. With a surge of adrenaline, Mike stepped forward, a mix of fear and courage igniting in his chest. This would be the moment. But just as he was about to take another step, everything around him flickered, the corridor warping like a mirage. Had he truly crossed into a different realm? "What is happening?" he gasped as the sounds warped into howls, shadows twisting like angry spirits. In that chaos, he locked eyes with the girl, her face pale but fierce. "We can't give up," she screamed, her voice strained over the rising noise. As darkness pressed in from all sides, Mike took a deep breath, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. Together, they would face whatever lurked in the corners of despair. But just as they readied for their confrontation, the world shifted again, what lay beyond the distorted fabric of their reality. The corridor twisted, the walls bending like a living thing. Groaning under the weight of their fears, shadows flickered in and out of existence. Mike felt sick, his stomach lurching as he tried to anchor himself in this nightmare. "Hold on," he shouted, gripping the girl's hand tighter. Together, they took 2 shuddering steps forward, but the floor felt like it was shifting beneath them, the very ground betraying their intent. Each step felt heavy, like wading through thick mud. "Is it just the fear?" she cried out, her voice cutting through the madness momentarily. "Or is he already here?" Before Mike could respond, a rush of wind tore through the corridor, the temperature dropping so suddenly that he exhaled a visible mist. The faint flickering bulbs above revealed glimpses of the figure, a silhouette flashing in and out of the strobe of light. Then, the whispers returned taunting, menacing. "You think you can escape? You're in my home now." Mike's pulse raced, the sound echoing in his ears like a war drum. "No. We won't bow to you," he bellowed, his voice carrying more defiance than he felt. The shadows converged, swirling around them with a life of their own. Forms twisted into shapes, faces he recognized but could not place. "Remember us?" a hollow voice echoed. "You left us behind." Memories flooded back. Faces from his past flashed like a slideshow, old friends, lost loves, people he had hurt, all reaching out, pleading, accusing. The weight of guilt settled into his chest like lead. "Don't listen," the girl shouted, shaking him from his reverie. "They're not real. They're just echoes of his power." Mike focused on her, on the strength burning in her eyes. "Right. I can't let them pull me in." He took a deep breath, trying to push out the whispers with the thought of light. Remembering her words from earlier, he concentrated on hope, fervently willing it into existence. Together. He shouted, clutching the girl's hand. We can do this. They stood side by side, soaked in determination, and somehow it felt like the shadows hesitated. With a burst of instinctive energy, Mike focused his thoughts on the light, the warmth, the brightness that could cut through this pervading darkness. With a sudden roar, a brilliant light pulsed from their joined hands. It forced back the encroaching shadows, illuminating the corridor in a radiant blue hue. Flickering forms shrieked in discomfort, dissipating as the light surged forward, momentarily banishing the darkness, but then, the figure emerged from the chaos, a dark mass edging closer with malicious intent. How dare you? It screeched, its voice filled with a primal fury that shook the walls. As it lunged, Mike braced himself, ready to fight for their lives. In an instant, their surrounding changed again, twisting violently. The light sputtered, and the corridor fragmented like glass, each shard reflecting pieces of their fears and hopes. Keep going. The girl urged, her voice nearly drowned out by the chaos swirling around them. We can't stop now. Just then, a piercing cry echoed through the fracturing space, sending shards of fear slicing into his heart. You will never find the way out. You're in my game, remember? Mike felt dread clutching at his throat, but he refused to back down. Not now. Not when hope flickered so close. It's time to end this. He yelled, his voice rising over the cacophony. With one last push, he gathered all the light he could muster, directing it toward the figure. But as that glimmering force surged forward, reality shifted again, and in a blinding flash, everything snapped to darkness. What awaited them in this latest shadow realm? The darkness swallowed Mike and the girl whole, an oppressive blanket that pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe. He flailed his arms, trying to get a grip on something, anything in this void. A sudden coldness wrapped around him, curling like fingers seeking to pull him away. Stay together. The girl's voice pierced through the dark, cutting through the silence like a desperate lifeline. He focused on her voice, the sound an anchor in the chaos. We can't let him take us. With that reminder, he reached out again, finding her hand, her warmth a stark contrast to the icy nothingness that enveloped them. But just as hope started to flicker back to life, the darkness shifted. Distant whispers rose around them, like the wind rustling through dead leaves, filling the air with malevolent laughter. What a lovely reunion. The voice twisted, echoing with a sinister charm that sent shivers down Mike's spine. Did you think you could escape? You are mine now. The space quaked, and suddenly, blinding lights flashed to life, illuminating a grotesque landscape. They stood at the center of an enormous chamber, walls dripping with a viscous substance that looked like black tar. All around them were doors, countless doors, some cracked open, revealing sinister scenes hidden within. Footsteps echoed, rhythmic and deliberate, as if someone was approaching. What are those? Mike stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Fear clawed at his throat as he realized that each door held a different nightmare, vivid images swirling in and out of existence. He caught glimpses of hooded figures performing dark rituals, screaming faces witnessing horror beyond comprehension, and shadows grappling with their own terror. They're his trophies, the girl said, her voice trembling. The victims he kept. Mike swallowed hard. They were standing in a gallery of fear, and a deep instinct screamed at him to run. We have to get out. We can't linger here much longer. But the ground shook again, and he felt the weight of something looming over them. A figure rose from the shadows. It was the dark mass that had hunted them before, but now it was more defined, anger radiating from its every move. Fleeing is not an option, it snarled, voice dripping with venom. You're part of my collection now. As it advanced, the room started to close in on them, walls shifting like a living organism. Mike wrestled with his instinct to panic. Grabbing the girl's hand tighter, he shouted, "We need to move. There has to be a way out. Look for the light." She cried, her eyes darting around. We've got to find the source. There. Struggling through the grotesque images, Mike noticed a thin beam cutting through the darkness, flickering like the spark of hope they so desperately clung to. With determination surging in his veins, he pulled the girl toward the light, hoping against hope that it would guide them to freedom, but as they ran, the dark figure bellowed, "You cannot escape your fate. You will return to me." The husky voice echoed, reverberating through the chamber like a thunderclap. Just as they reached the threshold of the light, shadows lunged from all directions, clawing at their ankles. Pain surged through Mike as fingers of darkness brushed against his skin, feeling cloying and dreadful. "No!" The girl screamed, the sound piercing through the chaos. With one last surge of will, Mike shoved them both into the brilliant light. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Silence fell like a shroud, then, a jarring impact sent them sprawling to the ground, and Mike gasped as he realized they were not alone. Looking up, fear flooded his veins. Around them, shadowy figures loomed, writhing as they pulled themselves into focus, their mouths poised to scream. They were back in the corridor, but this time it was different, more grotesque. "Where are we?" he muttered, heart hammering against his chest, but the girl seemed to know. "This isn't over, he's waiting for us," she whispered, eyes wide with horror. The very walls began to pulse ominously, and Mike felt a sense of impending doom. Crushed down upon them. How could they escape when the darkness was so cunning? An unsettling question lingered: how deep did the shadows stretch? Mike blinked in disbelief. The corridor twisted and warped, pulsating like it was alive, but the shadows had retreated, giving them a moment of twisted respite. He could still hear faint cries echoing in the air, remnants of despair from those trapped in the dark. "We have to keep moving," he said, pulling the girl closer, instinctively shielding her from any lurking threat. Her eyes darted, the fear palpable, but there was resolve etched on her face. Where to go? The corridor led in both directions, but no wall could outrun the haunting whispers that surrounded them, lingering just at the edges of their consciousness. "Let's try left," she said finally, nodding toward the crumbling wall that seemed to stretch endlessly. "I feel it, the others, they're close." Each step felt heavy, as if the floor was made of lead. Mike wished for the kind of chase scene he'd seen in movies, where the hero runs effortlessly from danger. Instead, it was a labor, every sound amplifying the pounding in his chest. "Do you think we can find the exit?" he asked, but deep down, doubt gnawed at him. "Maybe if we find that light again," she replied. "But I don't know if it's safe." Suddenly, the walls shuddered violently. Mike looked up just in time to see one of the doors swing wide, spewing out a foul, acrid mist. It filled the air with a noxious fog, suffocatingly thick. From within the haze, he caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure, face obscured but eyes glinting with malicious delight. "No!" he shouted, instinctively stepping backward, gripping the girl's arm with a vice-like hold. "Not again! Run!" she screamed, and they bolted down the corridor, the figure lurching back into the darkness to pursue them. Each footfall echoed like thunder in a vacant sky. The walls continued to pulse as they raced down the hall, anticipation and dread merging into a single terrifying force. Mike swept around a corner, the corridors branching off like a twisted labyrinth. "Where now?" he gasped out, looking for any sign of sanctuary. "In there." She pointed to a door just ahead that seemed less warped, more inviting. They rushed inside, slamming the door behind them. The room was barren, just a few pieces of decaying furniture and more of the black ooze seeping from cracks in the floor. But at the far end, soft light glimmered, beckoning to them like a lighthouse on a stormy night. "What is this place?" Mike whispered, riveted by a strange allure. "I don't know, but it might be our chance," she replied, hope and desperation mingling in her eyes. They moved toward the light, but as they approached, a chilling realization froze Mike in place. The flickering glow formed patterns, displaying tormented faces that twisted in agony. Each face flashed memories of people lost, trapped forever in the dark. That he staggered back, horrified. "This is wrong. No. We can't let this stop us." she urged, grabbing his sleeve. We have to break through, we can't turn back now. But the walls started to close in, drawn by an unseen force. The glowing images pulsated with intensity, the cries of the forgotten drowning out all rational thought. The darkness is coming, Mike warned, desperately searching for any escape as the room felt smaller, tighter. Shadows lunged toward them, crawling along the floor. Panic surged as he gripped the girl's hand, but in the chaos, he hesitated, caught between fear and an undeniable urge to fight back. What if we become like them? He shouted, his voice a mixture of desperation and defiance. Then we'll fight. She answered, her resolve igniting a spark within him. He nodded, determination flooding his veins. On 3, he said, feeling adrenaline charge through his body. Okay. She shouted. 1, 2, 3. They hurled themselves toward the glowing light, heart pounding, breath hitting the air like a storm. As they reached out, a high-pitched scream ripped through the air, echoing as if the room itself was crying out. Just as the darkness surged to consume them, they collided with the light and everything went white. When the brilliance faded, they found themselves in an entirely different space, a vast field under a bright blue sky. But looming in the distance was a familiar shadow, pulsating with darkness, watching. What is happening? Mike gasped, scanning their surroundings, but the girl gasped, her eyes widening in horror. This isn't freedom, he's found us again. The shadows had followed, and suddenly, the dread intensified like a storm brewing on the horizon. Run! She screamed, terror gripping her voice as Mike saw the darkness spreading like ink across the ground, but this wasn't just about escape anymore. It was a fight for their lives and souls, and Mike felt it deep down. Could they finally break the cycle? Or was the darkness destined to reclaim them yet again? The moment they began to sprint, the sky lost its sunny hue, transforming into a swirling mass of gray clouds. The brief illusion of safety shattered, replaced by a nagging dread as if the land itself was conspiring against them. Mike could feel the ground trembling beneath his feet, a sinister rhythm matching the relentless pulse of the shadow that loomed closer. Keep going! He yelled, forcing his legs to move faster. Each stride felt like running through concrete, heavy and exhausting, but he couldn't stop. Not now, she stumbled, nearly falling, but Mike gripped her hand tighter. I've got you. The warmth of her small hand in his gave him the strength he needed. They dashed across the field, desperately searching for anything resembling safety. Ahead, a dilapidated shack loomed, its dark silhouette contrasting sharply against the horizon. It seemed to beckon them, a sanctuary amidst the oncoming dread. There! She shouted, pointing. Come on! They sprinted toward the shack, the shadows behind them gaining speed, their inky tendrils slithering over the grass, creeping ever closer. As they reached the door, Mike yanked it open, heart racing. The air inside was stale, filled with the musky scent of forgotten memories. Dust motes floated in the beam of light slicing through a cracked window. But it wasn't empty. Old photographs lined the walls, images of people whose faces were obscured by time, their eyes seeming to follow Mike and the girl as they entered. Close it! She shouted, her breath ragged. Mike slammed the door shut just in time to hear the whispering shadows crash against it, rattling the flimsy frame. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine as if they were a breath away from being pulled back into the darkness. What now? He gasped, scanning the room for an escape route. A single, flickering bulb cast eerie shadows that danced and twisted, mimicking the essence of the specters chasing them. The girl's eyes darted around the room, landing on a staircase that spiraled into darkness above. We have to go up. Maybe we can find a window or something. Are you crazy? What if they follow us? He retorted, feeling a pulse of fear wash over him. Yet, seeing the conviction on her face, he nodded. Okay, let us go. They sprinted toward the stairs, the unsettling sound of clawing and scratching at the door growing louder behind them. Heart pounding, Mike led the way up into the murky unknown. Each step creaked ominously, echoes of their footsteps mixing with the clamoring shadows. At the top of the stairs, they emerged into a long hallway lined with doors, each painted a faded color, peeling at the edges like the memories trapped inside. The only sound was the distant wailing. The shadows had not given up. Panic surged as they approached the nearest door. It was slightly ajar, flickering light spilling into the hallway. "Open it," she urged, her voice whispering but tense. Mike pushed the door open, and they found themselves in a dilapidated room, the air thick with stagnant energy. An old mirror hung crookedly on the wall, its surface warped and hazy. But it was what stood before the mirror that made Mike's blood run cold. An ethereal figure emerged from the glass, its features contorted, eyes hollow yet glaring. It seemed to reach through the reflection toward them, stretching its wiry fingers, grasping for flesh. Mike's heart raced. The desperation etched on the creature's face mirrored their own agony. "This is just a trick," he shouted, shaking his head, but the girl was already stepping backward, eyes wide as she stumbled. "Mike, it looks like me," she gasped, pointing to the apparition that twisted like smoke. He stepped closer to see it better but froze as he realized the figure wasn't just an illusion, it was a person trapped that had been them, once. And the darker shadows that loomed in the room gathered nearer, ready to pounce. "Run! Now!" he yelled, grabbing her wrist. They fell back into the corridor, the echo of their pounding hearts racing against the frantic sound of sinister whispers closing in. "Where do we go?" she shouted, but before he could answer, a door at the far end swung open, revealing a blinding light. "Through there!" he yelled. As they dashed towards the light, the shadows shrieked, the chilling sounds tallied with their desperate footsteps on the floor. When they stepped into the light, they found themselves back in the field, but this time it was different. Night had fallen, darkness encircling them like a predator. The malevolent shadow stood at the edge of the field, monstrous and more terrifying than before. "Why does it keep coming?" she cried, her voice breaking, fear reflecting in her eyes. "Maybe we need to face it," he shouted, resolve flooding his veins. But before he could finish, the ground quaked, and the shadow lunged forward, ready to devour them. And in that moment of uncertainty, Mike took a breath, winding up for one last fight against the darkness. Could confronting the shadow bring an end to the relentless cycle, or would it consume them both? They faced the darkness together, hearts racing, as the true test awaited. Mike's heart pounded in his chest like a war drum. He could feel the rhythm syncing with the wild desperation in his mind. The monstrous shadow loomed larger, stretching its darkness across the field, blocking out what little light remained. He glanced at the girl beside him, her wide eyes shimmered with tears, reflecting the deep terror swirling just beneath the surface. They had no choice now. "Stay close," he commanded, pulling her just a step ahead of him. The brush of her hand felt like a lifeline. Together, they turned toward the oncoming darkness, breathing heavy with fear and grit. The shadows surged, tendrils slashing toward them, beckoning with their insidious whispers. Mike swallowed hard, feeling the very marrow in his bones tremble. This was no longer about fleeing, it was about standing their ground against an evil that seemed to defy comprehension. "Let us go," he shouted, adrenaline igniting their flight response. They sprinted toward the looming shadow, determined not to let fear take control. With every ounce of strength, Mike propelled them forward. A deafening roar erupted from the darkness, a cacophony of grief and malice. The ground quaked beneath their feet, gravel and dust swirling like a mini tornado. Still, they pressed on, half jogging, half stumbling, pushing against an overwhelming sense of doom. "Mike! It's coming!" she screamed, glancing back, panic ripping through her voice. He turned, just in time to see the amorphous form of darkness erupting outwards, its shape flickering like flames but cold and deadly. It lunged, its tendrils twisting, reaching for them. He felt the chilling brush of air as it swept past, grazing against them with a whisper of freezing dread. "Run!" he echoed again. He felt as if he could no longer think. It was instinct guiding them, two souls caught in a frantic race against inevitability, the shadows twisted and turned, forming grotesque shapes, almost human. Faces morphed from the inky void, a grotesque mimicry of terror and despair. Among them, he recognized the figures from the photographs in the shack. A woman with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes reached out as if begging for release. The sight sent a chill coursing through him. "Mike, we can't keep this up," she gasped, struggling to keep pace. "Just a little further," he replied, desperation swimming in his words. The light, the faint glimmer of hope, seemed just beyond reach. They sprinted toward it, their pace matching the frantic rhythm of their hearts. At the edge of the field, the shadows hissed, frustrated by their resolve. Mike pushed harder, his legs burning, but his mind screamed at him to keep moving. They could give in now, they wouldn't. Finally, the boundless night pulled back slightly, revealing an old path overgrown with weeds. As they dashed toward it, Mike felt that strange, flickering light draw closer, wrapping around them in a warm embrace. "Mike!" the girl cried, stopping short as she pointed with trembling fingers. Before them lay a flickering neon sign, "Welcome to the last motel." A chill ran up his spine. The smiley face on the sign drooped, twisted in warning, as if it had lost its happy demeanor long ago. "Do we go in?" she asked, uncertainty plastered across her features. I don't know," he began, eyes scanning the foreboding entrance, heavy with an inexplicable gravity. Shadows danced outside, still hungry, pressing against the doorway. The air thickened, constricting their options. Behind them, the shadows shifted dangerously, massing together, forming a looming wall of darkness, ready to surge forth. He could feel it in his bones. The darkness wanted them, craved their fear. "Let us go inside," he yelled finally, hoping against hope that the walls of that motel might provide refuge. As they pushed through the door, the world flipped once more. The interior was dimly lit, ghosts trapped behind the walls watching, waiting. A strange sound reached their ears, a low, resonating hum, beckoning them deeper into the mystery lurking inside. "Where are we now?" she whispered, glancing back toward the ominous darkness. "Outside." Before Mike could answer, something moved in the shadows of the motel, and a voice echoed from the depths. "Welcome to your last stop." An icy shiver ran down Mike's spine as he realized, in horror, that the night was unraveling into something far worse than the darkness they had fled. What awaited them? Could anyone survive what haunted the last motel? The air inside the last motel was heavy with desperation. Mike and the girl stepped cautiously into the main lobby, the floor creaking under their weight like a chorus of moans signaling their entry into hell. Dust hung thick in the air, swirling in the dim light from a sputtering bulb. The walls were plastered with peeling wallpaper, battered photos of happier times staring at them with accusing eyes. "This way," she urged quietly, pointing to a narrow hallway that snaked off into the gloom. Heart pounding, Mike followed her, his instincts screaming to run. The shadows loomed heavy behind them as if the darkness itself was trying to swallow their hope. As they made their way deeper, faint whispers echoed through the walls, a cacophony of lost souls trapped in this twisted realm. Panic welled inside Mike. "Do you hear that?" he asked, glancing back toward the entrance, dread pooling in his gut. "Yes, listen," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The whispers began to form words, resonating with sorrow and urgency. Help us, you must." "Who are they?" Mike asked, but there was no time for answers. The shadows inched closer as if drawn by the pulse of fear emanating from their hearts. The girl tugged at his sleeve, pulling him forward. "We have to keep going. There is something ahead." They reached a door at the end of the corridor, slightly ajar, light spilling out like a beacon of hope. With trembling fingers, Mike pushed it open, the door creaking angrily in protest. They stumbled into a wide room bathed in a warm glow, and for a moment, Mike felt an odd sense of calm. Here, the air was fresh, filled with the scent of pine and warmth. An ancient oak table stood at the center, its surface smooth and inviting, untouched by time. On the wall, a giant mirror reflected their weary faces, but it was different. It didn't show fear, it glimmered with a gentle light that wrapped around them soothingly. "What is this place?" the girl asked, her eyes wide and gleaming. "I don't know," Mike replied, stepping forward, mesmerized. But as he peered into the mirror, the soothing light fractured, revealing shadows lurking behind their reflections, whispering promises of despair. The chills surged back, freezing Mike's breath in his throat. "No!" he gasped, stepping away, but then came a familiar voice, echoing from the dark corners. "Help us, Mike, help us!" It was the same haunting chorus he had heard before, the wails of lost souls begging for salvation. A shiver ran down his spine. Gathering himself, Mike leaned toward the girl, his heart racing. "We can't let them sway us. The light needs to guide us. We have to believe in it, not the darkness." She nodded fiercely, and together, they stepped closer to the mirror, feeling the warmth draw them in. "On three," Mike said, his voice steady. "Okay. 1, 2, 3. They lunged toward the mirror, the light enveloping them like a protective cocoon. In an explosion of brightness, the world around them dissolved, and they found themselves on the other side. They were no longer in the motel. Instead, they stood on a hillside overlooking a vast forest under a breathtaking sunrise. Bees buzzed lazily, and birds sang sweet melodies, life bursting everywhere around them. "Did we make it?" the girl breathed, tears sparking in her eyes, reflecting the dawning light. Relief surged through Mike, but it felt fragile, like a bubble that could pop with a single pinprick of doubt. But suddenly, the ground shook, and shadows crawled out from the underbrush, swirling in an angry dance. The dark figure loomed behind them, furious, a monstrous combination of all the fears they had faced. Its voice boomed like thunder. "You think you can escape what is yours? No more!" Mike shouted, his pulse racing, fueled by a flicker of courage. "You will not take us." The girl took his hand again. "Together," she urged, and together, they stepped forward into the light, focusing with every ounce of strength to repel the shadows closing in. They shouted against the darkness, voices united, determination blazing like wildfire. "Light!" Mike bellowed, thrusting his hands forward. The morning sun flared, and beams of blinding light erupted from their joined palms, crackling against the consuming shadows, forcing them back. The dark figure shrieked, its form cracking into pieces as the radiance engulfed it. "Together!" the girl echoed again, her voice ringing triumphantly. As the light surged forth, a mighty roar erupted from the figure, and with one last defiant growl, it collapsed into wisps of dark smoke, dissipating like mist in the wind. The ground steadied, the shaking stopped, and warmth flooded back into Mike's chest. The world transformed around them, the sunlight bright and cheerful. The trees sparkled, the shadows scattering like remnants of fear fading with the dawn. "We did it," Mike whispered in disbelief, pulling the girl close, feeling the weight of their harrowing journey lifting away. In that moment, they found peace. They had faced the shadows, conquered their fears, and together emerged into a new beginning. The girl's eyes shone with wonder, and Mike knew they would carry this triumphant strength forever. And as they stood there, hand in hand, a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, filling the air with the rich scent of new beginnings. A whisper brushed against them, nostalgic yet hopeful. They were finally free. The camera panned away, capturing the beauty of the new dawn as Mike and the girl stood together on that hilltop, shadows of the past left far behind. Before you head out, make sure to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will tug at your heart and thrill your spine. Smash that like button now, it's crucial for feeding the algorithm and supporting us. Flood the comments with your reactions, we want to hear your thoughts and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. Your support truly makes a difference.